Not a surprise anymore.
Okay. All right, good evening, and welcome to the Hanson Board of Selectmen meeting. Tonight is Tuesday, January 28th, 2020, and we will be showing this on Whitman Hanson Cable. We are here tonight to start off with, we'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we will get to the main meat of the matter. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't know what just was happening. Was that somebody Siri reacting to our
Sounded
say?
like it was the phone up there.
It did?
Oh.
Yeah.
Something about someone's in someone's office.
Okay.
I didn't know we had intercom.
Well, I'd like to welcome everybody and thank everybody for coming to celebrate this lovely lady that we are all so blessed to know and fortunate to work with. We're fortunate tonight. We're joined by some former selectmen who have worked with Mary. We're joined by Senator Brady, Representative Cutler, and Keating has, Congressman Keating has also sent an aide. What can I possibly say about Mary that each of you don't already know? It isn't an overstatement to say that Mary's been the heart and soul of the town of Hanson and Hanson Town Hall for many years, answering questions from a variety of citizens on a plethora of issues, leading her peers by example in everything she does, graciously onboarding scores of freshman selectmen, like all of us and all of you have been, and acting as their mother, friend, confessor, therapist, and spiritual advisor. Her stellar work ethic, balanced judgment, and positive attitude have helped to guide every Board of Selectmen that have had the pleasure to work with her. She is one of the hardest working women I have ever met, and somehow, in the face of extreme adversity, she still manages to smile, and to say that she is grace under fire would be the understatement of the year. I remember my first encounter with Mary about 15 years ago when I was organizing a fundraising event for Panther Education Trust, and I was intimidated about the idea of calling up to Town Hall to ask, like, how did everything work and who should I be talking to? And I really didn't know what to expect, and I fortunately got Mary at the other end of the phone, and I hung up, and I was like, wow, they're actually friendly up at Town Hall. And I wrote a note to Rainey Reed at the time, and I said, she is a peach, and you need to do whatever you can to keep her. And he was like, well, we plan on doing that. So when I think about Mary's dedication to town, there's a lot of things that I don't think people see. And even though I had known her for years, the more I get to know her, the more I'm like, wow, this is one dedicated person. It's hard to even adequately express that, but she has singularly been responsible for some semblance of stability. I won't say total stability, but in the selectman's offices, we've had the revolving door of town administrators, which we're hoping to break that chain. More than once, Mary has stepped in to be the interim town administrator, while she's simultaneously done her own job of being the executive assistant to herself with very little additional compensation, and if any, in my estimation, adequate appreciation. But her dedication, it's the little things that she does behind the scenes. And recently, for instance, in preparation for John Stanbrook, our new town administrator, coming, what was Mary doing the weekend before John Stanbrook came, you might ask? Well, she was up in the office spackling the office and painting it so that John would have a nice sparkling office when he arrived. I think that is, the embodiment of going above and beyond. She's single-handedly organized and rallied the troops at Town Hall to decorate Town Hall for the holiday festival. The last Halloween extravaganza, she was up there with Matt and me in our crazy Ghostbusters cabin, decorating. I mean, this is just who she is. It's constant 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that isn't to say that her family isn't important and her priority, because clearly they are. And I think that's one of the things I'm happiest about, is that you'll be able to spend more time with your family. And we thank you all for the sacrifice you've made in lending her to us for this time. I
It
think,
was only to get through the crisis.
went through it.
That was a Joe Nugent crisis.
I'm sorry, Fred. It's been one
Glad to
crisis.
have her back.
One crisis after another. So, you know, most recently, as you all know, she graciously offered to extend her stay with us, even though she had planned on retiring in December, so that we could right the ship and get an executive assistant in and get a town administrator in. And there's really no way to adequately express how grateful I personally am, and I know the entire board is, for that sacrifice and for your continued commitment. So with that, I'm going to wish you a happy and long and prosperous retirement. And we've got a little token of our appreciation, which I don't know where it is.
Right behind Kenny?
Okay.
Ken?
Oh. Chance to know the desk is off. You gotta come up front now.
Go tell.
Yeah, you gotta walk in front of everybody.
And this is just a small token of the board's appreciation for you.
Well, this was really not necessary and a total surprise, and surprising me is usually kind of hard. But having my family here is great. Jeff comes from New York. I mean, he comes home on a pretty regular basis, and I'm always saying, don't make short trips. You know, don't spend the money. So.
Well, we're thrilled. I'm thrilled that he did.
And Stephen and Suze, I should introduce my family. My son Jeff, my New York boy, my older son Stephen, his girlfriend Susie, my husband Fran, and the best daughter ever, Trish. Thank you everyone for coming. This is a real surprise. It really is. Let's see.
I'm surprised that you're surprised.
I
Everybody that knows you knows you're, you know, up
I'm
to the
usually on
task.
top of things, but I've been busy scheduling other type of appointments in my life.
Why is she looking at you, Fred? Careful, man, put in this rod.
Oh, very nice. It is a clock, and for those who are in the back can't see it, it has the town of Hanson seal on the center of it. Oh. So thank you very much.
With that, I thought I would turn it over to Congressman Cootie, Senator Brady, and Representative Cutler. And then I'd really like to hear from any of the former selectmen that have served with Mary that might want to share some remembrances and thoughts and the like. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the board for inviting us here to be part of this event to honor you, Mary. Just on behalf of the congressman, who unfortunately he's in D.C. tonight, but he asked me to come and express our gratitude on behalf of our constituents, the people of Hanson, who you have served with such dedication and devotion for all these years. And we know that, you know, I think the chair talked about some of the other duties as not always described in the resume that come up, and clearly that's not been above you or beyond you. So I know the people here in Town Hall and all across the town appreciate that, and we appreciate being able to work with the town and make sure that we're kind of rowing in the same direction. And I think that's a testament to the selectmen and all the boards and all the people who work for the town that were able to do that. So just if I could ask you to come over, and I think you might as well just stand over here. I think it's going to be a cavalcade, but just on behalf of the congressman, we have a certificate of special congressional recognition, proudly presented to Mary Marini in recognition of over 21 years of dedicated service to the town of Hanson upon your retirement. And it's signed this 28th day of January 2020 by Congressman William Markey. So, thank you. Congratulations.
Here, Mary.
Senator Brandon?
And if Representative Keller would come up as well, because we've got some joint things here. And again, as a good friend mentioned, we want to thank you for all your years of tireless service to the town of Hanson and all you do behind the scenes as well, because there's a lot of work that gets done behind the scenes that people here know, but a lot of the public outside do not know. So thank you for all you do behind the scenes as well. And this is an official citation from the State Senate to Meredith Marini, joyous occasion of your retirement following 21 years of tireless service to the town of Hanson, for which you are appreciated, admired, and beloved. This is signed by the Senate President Karen Spilka, the clerk Michael Hurley, and myself, Mike Brady. Congratulations.
Thank you. Do the other orientation. I'm thinner that way.
All right, don't go anywhere, Mary. Not done yet. All kinds of goodies here. So good evening, everybody. Distinguished guests, members of the Selectmen, Judge Marini. It's a pleasure to have the Marini family here and former representative himself for our district. Thank you all. I've been around a little bit here in Hanson, and I know we have Rainey Reed here. I just saw walked in. Welcome, Rainey, and our new town administrator. So we're so happy to be working with you. But through it all, through both your tenures, it's been Mary who's been that's kept the steady hand on the ship of state to make sure Hanson continues to move forward. I can recall one time going to I think a scouting meeting, and someone was asking me about what a state representative did, and one of the kids asked, "Was that like being a mayor?" And I said, "No, that's Mary Marini. That's her job." And it truly is. We know, those of us who work in government, we know when we needed to get something done, when we needed to get an answer, we'd always call Mary. She'd always have the answer, or she'd know where to get the answer. And we're really going to miss her. We know we have a great team replacing you, but it's not going to be the same. We're truly going to miss you. You've been the fabric that held this town together in many ways, and we've had some interesting times, but you've been the fabric that have kept that together. So I personally am going to miss you very much, but I know I speak for everyone else when I say that as well. So I have a citation here, which I know Michael read one as well, but I'm going to read as well, and then we have a little gift. This is from the Massachusetts House of Representatives.
Seen them.
I'm sure you have. Well, as Judge Marini knows, we call it the People's House. It's not like a House of Lords. Be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations to Meredith Mary Marini in recognition of 21 years of outstanding and dedicated service to the town of Hanson, serving as executive assistant to the Board of Selectmen and also interim town administrator on many occasions. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses a hope for future good fortune and continued success in all endeavors. Given this 28th day of January 2020, the State House of Boston, Massachusetts, signed by Robert A. DeLeo, Speaker of the House, and Representative Ross Cutler. Mary, let me give you a hug. So we have a little gift from Michael and I. This is a card. You can open that whenever you like. And this is a little token of our appreciation to remember us by. And
Should I open it?
you can open it now, sure. Yeah.
Is that your book, Josh?
I have to confess, like Josh did all the wrapping. I would have destroyed it if I started wrapping. So.
This is actually, this is a funny story. We didn't have wrapping at the State House. This is actually wallpaper.
Wasn't in your office. What? Pretty heavy wallpaper. All right, there we go.
You reflect on your many years of service to the town of Hanson. You can reflect.
No, we get it, we get it.
We get it, we get the analogy. Well, thank you, gentlemen. I didn't know, we've got other prior Board of Selectmen members here, and I'd really love it if anybody felt inspired to share some thoughts, or I do. I edited it a little. No, I'm just kidding.
But before I get into this, just a little incident that happened when Mary was very new at the time. And Mary got caught in the middle, and she was very new, and she got caught in the middle of a nefarious situation that happened when she first got here involving a former...
You don't point at me, Bruce. I make a sign, no offense, Josh. I make a sign like my old job.
But you got involved towards the end of it, because I had to make an appeal to you because you were a state rep at the time, and Mary was involved in it. It involved some nefarious land dealings with a certain former town administrator. They were called executive secretaries in those days, and a former building inspector. And I was put in the position of being the third member that was appointed to the now infamous building inspector review panel, who was in charge of reviewing all of the complaints against the building inspector and coming up with a final report. And in the charge to the three-member committee was the statement that if you need, we will accept minority opinions in this report. So the final, we met several times, we held open meetings, and the final report was 32 pages long. There was a 9-page initial report, and my 23 pages of minority opinions. Well, I was informed that we had to meet an executive session, which Mary remembers. We met an executive session, which the Board of Selectmen was to hear the report. By the time I get out of that meeting, my 23 pages of minority opinions had been excised from the report, and Mary was assigned to run off the new 9-page report without my 23 pages of minority opinions, which I had a right to do. And we went into public session, and they read the 9 pages if that had been the original report without my 23 pages. So, of course, after I get out of there, the next day I complained to the Division of Public Records to get my 23 pages back in. And after 4 months of calling them, I finally turned to Fran and I said, Fran, what can you do to get my 23 pages finally back into the report so this can go as part of the public record? And he went to bat for me, and he got them called, made a phone call, and got them. We got them put back in. And to this day, they're at in the town clerk's office. But
Well,
Mary
thank you for
was
sharing
assigned-
that. Now, Bruce, you just reminded me that I didn't lay the rules of engagement. You just reminded me, okay?
Because it involved both poor Mary at the time, who was new, and then later Fran, I thought I would share that with everybody.
All right.
Now,
I'm sure
I'm sure Joe Nugent's thrilled.
I should have brought I just had my Joe Must Go button out. I should have brought it in as a souvenir. Throughout her 21 years as executive assistant to the Board of Selectmen, and also in the capacity of interim town administrator, Mary has displayed a vast knowledge of responsibilities of both positions, which in my opinion have been second to none. She has provided invaluable positive guidance and advice to both the members of the Board of Selectmen and town administrators over the years, and through both good as well as difficult times. The fact that Mary has remained steadfast and rock solid in her position, serving under many boards of selectmen with diverse personality types, and serving under every town administrator who have now come and gone while she has remained for 21 years, to be fittingly recognized on this day is a fact that speaks volumes about her amazing work ethic and her ability to work with everyone who has passed through these doors. I wish to congratulate Mary for all of her years of dedicated service to the town of Hanson and wish her all the best for a long, healthy, and happy retirement in the years ahead.
I don't know, Mr. Howard, I don't know if you wanted to get up and say a few words?
Find the podium.
This is old home week, isn't it, boys?
This is about this lady right here.
I sat there for 10 years
Yes, you did.
in the same chair. I can't say much more that's already been said to you, Mary, other than the fact that I'm glad I checked up on you almost every morning.
Yes, you did.
And days that I missed you, you were afraid I was sick or something.
I would check on you. Dawn's not in. Where's Dawn?
But I'm very glad that you're retiring, and I know you and Fran will have a very good time. And the thing about it is, don't forget where I live. Sometimes in the summertime, you might want something.
That's right. I might stop in and get some zucchini.
So other than that, and then, no, another thing too, I was on a lot of committees, which I'm still on, and Mary kept me straight because I couldn't keep it straight all the time. So I'd have to call Mary and she'd say, oh yeah, you got this one, this one, this one. So and I thank you again for that too, Mary.
I'm good at giving marching orders. Right, Grant?
So like I said, you can't say much more about you.
Well, thank you.
I mean, you're so dependable and exuberant on what you've done for the town of Hanson. And I know all the residents are going to miss you. All right? Thank you very much.
Mr. Egan, did you want to say a few words?
No, he said no.
Did he say, I don't have my glasses on, did you say?
Yeah, he said no.
Okay,
Good luck, Mary.
Thanks, Jim.
okay.
That's gonna be mine, short
And
and sweet.
Mr. Reed?
Sure. I got a couple things to say, Mary. How are you? Frank, how are you? It's a pleasure to see you.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, good.
How are you? It's, come here. I can't believe you're leaving. I had to come back because I think I'm the first town administrator who wasn't fired or invited back. So
That's why you wanted the invite, that's why you were
prove to you
invited.
that you actually can walk back in here, not in cuffs. It does happen, it does happen. I'm a living testament to that. I was asked by Greer to remember a time working with you, and there were so many, forgive me. When I first got here, things were rough. It was tough. It was tough. It was tough because it was hard, and that's kind of what's got me emotional, because we weren't sure if we were going to lay off 20 people or 8 people or 3 people. It was a tough budget season. But I remember going home and telling my wife, Lee, I said, Lee, she would ask me, how's work? I said, oh my God, it was hard. You know, we're going through this budget cycle. It's really tough. We don't know if we're going to be able to make it, and we got through it. And I said, the woman I'm working with, my God, she just won't stop. She's just go, 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 go. You know, we're working 25 hours a day, just insane, the pace. And over the years we worked together, the 3.5 years, I finally said to her, as I was leaving, I said, Mary, when I first started here, I couldn't believe the pace you kept. I'm like, how did you do it? And she said, well, shit. You were going so fast, I thought I had to keep up with you. I said, Mary, I was trying to keep up with you. These are the kind of conversations we should have had when I first started. You remember? I mean, you and I and Gene Sullivan, we were running back and forth down that hall.
It was crazy.
Oh my God, it was nuts. But it was a great time. It was a great time. And I always swore to God that if you ever left, this place would close, so they better watch out. You walk out here, if they shut the lights out behind you, I wouldn't be surprised, but I wish you a very long, healthy, and happy retirement. It's great to see you.
Great to see you.
Thank you all for having me.
I don't know if anybody else wanted to give a brief remembrance or,
Remembrance? That makes it sound like
memory. If anybody else wanted to, yes.
Many of you don't know me. I'm Charlie Seelig, the
Yes,
town
Charles,
administrator
yep.
over in Halifax.
Yep.
Mary and I have corresponded much more than we've actually seen each other, despite the small distance between us. And I'm really thrilled to see all of you here to show your appreciation for this wonderful municipal employee. She's been great for the town of Hanson, great through all the things we've all had to go through. I'm very happy that John, as a personal friend and co-worker back in Halifax a number of years ago, was here. But Mary, you're losing someone great. And I wanted to come up and make the trip up. I have to get back in a couple of minutes to the 7 o'clock down there. But I wanted to be here for this, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles.
Did anybody else have anything that they wanted to share? If not, we will take a recess and we will convene in the, I'm not sure how we're all going to fit in there. We will convene in the area, in the cafeteria for some cake and
Cake? For the people who aren't here on a regular basis, cake is what we do at Town Hall. I've worked with 25 different selectmen, 8 town administrators, 9 plus me, and it has been a blast. It's been a great job, best job ever. Commute, 6 minutes. If I hit the lights, I can do it in 5. And I haven't been stopped once, but I realize I'm not done yet. TV's in the back now; they'll be watching for me. The people who worked with me at Town Hall have been just fabulous. Great group of people. Hanson's fortunate to have the dedicated people that they do. Everybody's knowledgeable, and I can't tell you how many people have come through Town Hall and said, "This is the nicest Town Hall I've ever been in. Everybody is so nice." And it's true, because everybody likes their job and they like what they do. And that's the most important thing for a governmental employee. Remember who you're working for, remember why we're here, and everybody will be fine. And I'm thrilled that John and Greer are here. They're going to make a fabulous team. Kind of like Rainey and I. Rainey and I made a really good team. I hated to see him go, as did everybody in the building. Hated to see Rainey go. But we've sucked it up, and we've had some other people, but now I'm quite confident that the people who are going to be at the end of the table now are going to carry on, and town's going to be fine. And I do just want to thank all the residents who have come and gone in the years. People have been so nice. Some have not been happy when they've come in to see me, and I would understand that. But I would always try to give them the best advice I could and tell them I will do what I can. Sometimes it's not the answer they're looking for, but I always try to have them leave the office understanding what was actually going on. So thank you to all the residents who've been so nice. I would have some people, Don, even though he is a resident, he would bring me fruits from his garden, which was very nice. A few women from the senior center and other residents would bring in flowers that they picked from their gardens just because, not that I had done anything, but I think because they watched the selectmen's meetings, which these are the people that I would say, you need to find something to do on a Tuesday night. And after a meeting, they would come in and bring me flowers just, to cheer me up after some of the meetings. And it's been, some of them really needed more than flowers, but in spite of what people think, I do not drink. Thinking maybe that's the only way I got through the 21 years. Wasn't it? I don't know what it is, but thinking on it, it's my family. They were family. Are you listening, paying attention? That's right. Because they were supportive, and it was a perfect job being so close to home. I'd be able to, be home with my kids, and The main reason why I did not want this job as a full-time gig was because my family was first. So we could go to hockey games, and we could go to theater, and we could go to whatever else we were going to do.
Doctor, I think.
Doctor, yeah. Doctor's appointments, we do those too. So thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Oh, we love her. Are you kidding me? We love her.
Trans, good to see you. You're welcome.
Thank you. It's good seeing you. No, that's okay. Good to see you again.
Thank you, and welcome back to our January 28th Selectmen's meeting. We're reconvening after having a brief celebratory little happening for the outgoing Executive Administrative Assistant, Mary Marini, and now we're moving on to our agenda. And with that, Mr. Bloss, may I impose upon you to read the public announcements and upcoming meetings?
You can. Can we start with a moment of silence for Charlie O'Donnell,
Yes.
former school committee member and all-around good guy in town? Thank you, everybody. Announcements, very fast, long, lots of announcements, speed reading. A reminder to all Town of Hanson residents that the third quarter 2020 real estate personal property taxes are due and payable on Monday, February 3rd, 2020. To make paying taxes more convenient, the Town of Hanson offers the option to pay your taxes online at www.hanson-ma.gov. If payments are mailed, please address your Town of Hanson Treasurer Collector's Office, 542 Liberty Street, Hanson, Mass. 02341. As a reminder, postmarks cannot be accepted. Nomination papers for the May 16th Town of Hanson annual election are now available at the Hanson Town Clerk's office. For more information, contact the Town Clerk at 781-293-2772. Early voting will begin on February 24th and continue through February 28th, 2020 for the presidential primary on March 3rd. Early voting can be done in person at the Hanson Town Hall, 542 Liberty Street during regular business hours, which are Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m., 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Tuesday, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m., 2 p.m. to 8 p.m., and Friday, 8 a.m. to 12 noon. Voting may be done anytime during those hours from February 24th to February 28th. Absentee ballots are now available at the Hanson Town Clerk's office for the presidential primary being held on Tuesday, March 3rd. Any registered voter who is unable to vote in person on Election Day due to absence from town, physical disability, or religious belief may obtain an absentee ballot. Voters may absentee vote in person at the Town Clerk's office or by mail. Applications for absentee ballots will be accepted at the Town Clerk's office until 12 noon, Monday, March 2nd. For more information, call the Town Clerk's office at 781-293-2772. All voters and residents who have not returned their 2020 census forms are urged to do so by the Town Clerk. Any voter that has not returned their 2020 town census form will be placed on the inactive voter list for future elections. The Hanson Library is again participating in the Boston Bruins annual PJ Drive to benefit DCF and Cradles to Crayons from February 1st through March 15th. The Hanson Library will be accepting donations of new pairs of pajamas for babies, children, and teens with the goal of collecting 100 pairs. The MVP, Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Workshop, will be held on February 7th from 8:30 to 3:30 p.m. at Needles Lodge at Camp Kewanee. Residents, business owners, and relevant town officials and employees interested in planning for the effects of climate change are welcome to attend. Please RSVP to http://hansonmvp.rsvpify.com as lunch will be served. Local veterans and their families are invited to take advantage of a free program distributing brand new winter coats, food and hygiene supplies to military families in need. State Representative Josh Cutler, Pembroke Veterans Agent Robin Kernan, and Hanson Veterans Agent Tim White are hosting the Mass Military Support Foundation visit on Friday, February February 7th, from 11 to 1 p.m. behind the Pembroke Recreation Center at 128 Center Street. Open burning season began on January 15th and will run until April 30th. Permits are now available at Fire Headquarters, 505 Liberty Street, daily from 9 to 5. The cost of a permit is $20, payable by check or money order made out to the town of Hanson. No cash will be accepted. Volunteers are needed on the following committees: 200th anniversary, capital improvement, Conservation Commission, regular and 2 associate members, Cultural Council, Disabilities, Economic Development, Finance, Highway Building Committee, Historical Commission, Memorial Day Patriotic Observance, Memorial Field Trustees, North River Commission, and Zoning Board alternate. Applications for appointment and info on the committee is available on the town website, www.hanson-ma.gov. Upcoming meetings, Tuesday, February 11th and Tuesday, February 25th, 2020, both Board of Selectmen, both at 7 p.m.
Thank you very much. That was quite a mouthful. Moving on, we're going to take a couple of items out of order in the interest of not torturing people and making them stay. And to that end, we have got item 5 on the agenda, which is vote the town administrator's recommendation for the Council on Aging van driver position. And I will, to whom am I queuing this up? John? Okay. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. So we had a Council on Aging van driver position open up, and we had 5 applications put in for the position at the senior center. We interviewed 3 applicants. I interviewed 2 of them, and Mary and COA Director Collins had interviewed the other person. And it's my recommendation to hire Dawn Marie Lewis. Dawn Marie grew up in Hanson, and she's a graduate of Whitman-Hanson High School. She currently works for community counseling of Bristol County, where she helps families navigate through the healthcare system. She helps identify services for both physical and behavioral health needs. Prior to that, she worked for 10 years as an EMT for Fallon Ambulance, where her duties included driving ambulance and direct patient care. She has a wealth of experience treating and transporting elder patients with dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So I would recommend that we, to the Board of Selectmen, that they hire Dawn Marie Lewis for the position of Council on Aging van driver position, subject to a successful background and reference and query check.
Okay, great.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you. And I'm glad that you've filled that position. I know how critical it is, so. Yep. All right, with that, we will move on to the town accountant update. And Todd, will you take the podium, sir?
Good evening. I'm going to give the board a brief update as to how we're doing through the second quarter of the fiscal year through December 31st. You should have a 4-page portrait-style set of exhibits similar to what we've done together in the past. Firstly, the general fund. To date, I can tell you that everything seems to be tracking well, if not a little favorably in some cases. The excise, just sort of working from the top down, I'll highlight a few things just for the board's clarification. The excise tax line, you'll notice, is only at 14.5% of budget. But we just got this week the first commitment for the 2020 excise. That's more of a cyclical revenue that comes in February, March, April. That's when we get the big, and the commitment was for $1,358,000, the first commitment. So that will swing when we get together for the third quarter. You'll notice a substantial change in the excise tax revenue again, and that's because of the timing of the major billing. Payments in lieu of taxes is doing better than budget, and that really relates to some sale of some foreclosed property that the board approved a while back. So it's not necessarily a recurring amount. It's not a big amount, but I just wanted to highlight to you that's why we're exceeding the budget this year. I think the commitments for ongoing ones are just around $10,000, ongoing pilot agreements. Investment income, as you'll see, is doing very well compared to the budget. So when we talk later about the 21 budget preliminary forecast, we'll have an uptick in the estimate for investment earnings, as the rates have been much better than recent years. On the expense side, general government is doing very favorably, but I would just let you know that we have a few special articles included in that number that have not been expended yet, most notably $160,000 for the new fiber network under the IT budget. So when, again, that project's just underway, and I expect when we're together in April, most of that $160,000 will be expended, and that will change the percentages here a bit. But we're still tracking well in general government. We had a few vacancies through part of the first half of the year in planning and conservation, so we've yielded a little bit of savings. Public safety is tracking how they typically do, as well as education. Public Works, to date, I'm pleased to tell the board we still have a positive balance in our snow budget, about $129,000 as of the end of January.
And you have now cursed us officially.
Yeah, probably. Let's see. Employee benefits and insurance looks high for halfway through the year, but I'd remind the board that we make our entire pension assessment payment in July to save on the overall annual cost. Otherwise, there's an 8% interest added by Plymouth County. So that's sort of front-loaded the expense for that, and that's well in excess of $1 million. In debt service, similarly, it's just based on how our existing long-term debt is scheduled. Most of it has been paid at this point, and I think the only thing we may have a septic interest payment due, but other than that, we're pretty much done with debt service for the year. So the general fund is tracking well. I'll just briefly touch on the other appropriation funds. On the next page, the water fund. You'll see through 6 months, they've brought in 51% of their budgeted revenue. Again, we typically see a little more of an increase in the second half of the year because on the third quarter real estate tax bills, water liens are added, and so we typically, once those are collected in the third quarter, see a little bit of an increase, and that's usually a couple, sometimes close to 200,000. I don't recall what this year's liens were. I think they were a little less than that, but so that again is a little something we expect in the third quarter for those delinquent water accounts. They get added to the liened and added to the tax bills. So I don't anticipate any problems overall with the water revenues. On the expense side, everything is pretty much tracking as we would expect. They'll be tight on most of the budget, but I don't have any concerns, and they still have a fairly healthy surplus for any needs they might have at the upcoming town meetings in May. We'll talk a little bit more about water when we get to next year's budget, because things will be a little less favorable going forward. With respect to the recreation enterprise, Camp Kewanee operations, revenues are tracking well to budget this year. You'll recall we had some one-time revenue, about $26,000 from Netflix for the movie taping, which we will not enjoy next year. Well, maybe we will. I don't want to jinx that.
You can't predict what.
That's right.
Will, yeah.
That's right. But I just wanted to point out there was some one-time revenue, about $26,000 this year, and you'll notice in the first column, in the budget column at the bottom, $116,000 of their retained earnings was used to balance or fund the overall budget of $347,000. That's an important data point as we talk later about the 21 budget. They're left at this time with just over $4,000 of unappropriated retained earnings that town meeting could use between now and June 30th.
Thanks.
Lastly, the solid waste enterprise, the transfer station. Again, revenues are tracking reasonably well comparatively to prior years. Again, under the other revenue column, you'll recall we've got some, this is where the revenue for the transfer station stickers is showing. And these stickers were purchased by residents for good for 3 years.
Right.
So the revenue's coming in essentially 1 year. It's good for 3. So again, this won't be necessarily recurring revenue next year, other than for maybe perhaps new residents. Also, I'd point out, again, at the bottom of the budget column, nearly $146,000 of retained earnings was used to balance or fully fund this year's budget, leaving them with just under $16,000 left to be available for appropriation the rest of this year. Also, the Board of Health is trying to negotiate. As you know, you've been involved with the increased costs with the disposal of solid waste, and we're still not clear whether or not there's enough in the budget to carry us through the balance of this year. But I know that's close to being negotiated.
That's on our agenda this evening. Yep.
Very good. So, but we're going to have to cost that out and project and see whether this year's budget wasn't built with those assumptions. So that's just a sort of yellow light caution that we're not out of the woods necessarily this year with solid waste.
Did anybody have any questions?
If anyone has any questions.
I only have one question.
Sure. Yes, sir.
Todd, has anybody got a chance to talk to the water department about the possibility of going quarterly billing?
Yes, I have. I spoke with Superintendent Davis, and he was completely agreeable to doing it next year once they're just about done with all the new meters being installed. And so the process for them is going to be very much streamlined and automated going forward. So it should be, something that they verbally agreed to do in the next fiscal cycle.
Good. Excellent.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I guess the only, you kind of hinted to a couple of things that you're concerned about moving forward.
Yes.
Is there any other concerns that you would have at this time?
At this time, it's, of course, we're always concerned about the white stuff, but we're doing well to date. It's really the transfer station, whether we might need to still do a supplement to get through the year to cover those increased disposal costs. Other than that, I don't honestly have any concerns. We have little minor things we're looking at, but we can handle those through transfers later in the year. But nothing of concern. Everything's tracking pretty well.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Todd.
All right, thank you, Todd.
Sure.
Okay, we've got FY21 budget presentation.
Is that?
I-
Well, no, you can go ahead.
Okay.
Go right ahead. That's you.
Sorry, Todd, not to torture you.
Quite all right. Also in the board's packet, which was just completed this afternoon, you should have two landscape exhibits that we're going to be talking from. The first being the operating budget overview, the second being the first look at the capital budget, 5-year capital plan. And again, tonight, we're required, the administration's required by town bylaw to deliver the budget to the board by January 31st. So we're here to, be in compliance with that town bylaw. I see you have your budget books. What we've done to date is, which I'll review with the board, is some preliminary estimates, and we're disclosing for you the department requests. We haven't made any major adjustments to department requests yet. The ones we have made have been agreeable with the departments. And John, having been on board just for a few weeks, he and I, over the next few weeks after this, will, I'm sure, come back to the board with some recommendations because we, as you know, have a challenging budget year ahead. So I'll mainly first talk to the cover page, which is entitled Sources and Uses. So these are sources of funds available for the town to use for appropriation and how those funds might be used, appropriated or otherwise. So just sort of working from the top down, and again, the far right column are our preliminary estimates. We've got just under $21 million of tax levy from last year, which includes any growth and prior overrides or 2.5% increases. 2.5% yields about $525,000 townwide for new tax revenue we're allowed to raise statutorily. At this time, we're estimating new growth at $275,000, which is about a 1.3% increase in the tax levy. What I will tell you is that to date, construction is lagging behind this estimate, and we're just hoping that the spring comes early and construction gets moving. Based on building permit activity, things are still healthy. It's just a lot of the projects have been slow to really get moving, and I'm working with the chief assessor to sort of keep a close eye on this. And as you can see, I've provided you the last prior 4-year history too to look at. This would be the lowest growth we've experienced in the last 5 years. But at this point, there's not a lot known that's going to happen between now and June 30th that gives us comfort that this number will be much higher. But we'll update the board as new information becomes available. Then we have, as you know, some voter-approved debt exclusions. The one we have here in town for the town of Hanson is for the police station. That debt has a few years left before it matures, and you'll notice it goes down a little bit each year. We did in the fall, when we did the bond sale for various water projects, we also included refunding of this police station, so that's yielded some savings for the taxpayers. The other thing it's created this year was we're going to spend about $26,000 less in interest than we had budgeted. So because that's a debt exclusion, and when we set the tax rate, we used the prior interest schedule, there'll be a $26,000 savings to the taxpayers built into the next year's as we set the tax rate. So in effect, we over-levied this year based on what our actual interest expense will be for the police station. And we can't get away with that, in other words. Communities can't get away with that. If we have that savings, but we raised the levy a little bit higher, we've got to lower the levy in the next year. In our case, it's about $26,000. The next two exclusions relate to the Whitman-Hanson Regional High School and some technology improvements for the high school that the voters agreed to pay for over, I believe, a 5-year period. This is the final payment in 2021.
For the technology?
For the tech.
And when's the final payment on the high school?
You know, I didn't bring that with me. I want to say it's like 26.
Okay.
But we'll get that for it. I don't know if you have the...
I don't have the debt.
I'm sorry, I didn't bring the debt schedule with me. But it's still got a few years left. And those numbers are shaded because we don't have final numbers, allocations from the region yet. So those are sort of my guesstimate as to what our share of those payments will be. What's also not included on here, I'll talk about that on the budget side, I apologize. There is one other piece of regional debt, but it wasn't excluded by the voters. On Thursday, we got notification of the preliminary state numbers based on the governor's proposed budget. So those have been factored in here, and that's why we hadn't advanced anything to the board. We wanted to make sure we at least had the governor's numbers in here for you. And that really, as you know, also helps the regional schools, both the Voc Tech and Whitman Hanson, because it's an integral part of their funding, state aid. So we did get a number from the Voc Tech, I think on Friday, late in the week. And Whitman Hanson, I think, has their school board looking at the budget next week. So we'll, I guess, have some numbers after that. Going along down, so at this point, we've got a little over $1.2 million in free cash. Again, we don't advocate that free cash be utilized to cover or fund recurring operating costs. So you'll notice we're recommending no free cash be used to supplement or offset the operating budget. However, the capital, which we'll review in a little bit, and transfers to the stabilization funds, we're recommending $938,000 at this time. And we'll work, as we get closer to town meeting and we see how the rest of the winter unfolds, this hopefully this number won't have to change. But certainly if we had a bad winter here on out, we might need to fund some shortfall in snow, which is not reflected here. Let's see. We're proposing the typical use of overlay surplus of $20,000 to fund tax title legal services to pursue delinquent taxes. The use of the ambulance receipts reserved, we've raised up to $425,000. This year's budget was $350,000, and we had some equipment purchases for $60,000 that were funded at the fall town meeting. So we're, from an operating standpoint, we're going from $350,000 to $425,000. And we've done a multi-year plan on ambulance and on that account, and we're comfortable raising it to that level and still being able to replace equipment and ambulances and things as needed without going to the taxpayers for those items. In addition, any of debt service we have related to the septic loan program is transferred here from the loan program as homeowners repay the loans. We set the funds aside and town meeting appropriates it. So there's no impact to the taxpayers. The people who had the home improvements are paying for it, and it's a sort of a pass-through, if you will. And we have a very modest amount of bond premium that's applied that dates back to the original police station construction. Let's see. So that sort of. I apologize. I skipped over local receipts. So local receipts, as you know, includes the major item is motor vehicle excise. It includes permits, fees, licenses, investment earnings. So we're forecasting about a 6% increase in this area. So essentially, the tax. So our overall revenue, property taxes being the primary one, state aid, which is relatively flat, and local receipts with a 6% increase, those combined yield about a 3.4% increase in overall revenue available to fund the budget or recurring costs. So if we go down to the next section that after those other sources of funds, with preliminary discussions with the assessing office, they've suggested an allowance for abatements and statutory exemptions of about $210,000, and a substantial portion of this is really related to statutory exemptions for veterans and so forth. We really have a very modest amount. We raise less than 1% of the levy to cover these allowances or abatements for change in adjustment in value, assessed values. The governor's budget includes state and county charges. It's not just about state aid, but there are costs associated with, in our case, mosquito control, the MBTA, Transit Authority, our Plymouth County tax. And so that's about $160,000. And there's also just under $15,000 that's allocated for aid to public libraries. And this, you see, is I have it as a deduct because it's in the overall revenues that were provided. But when that $15,000 comes in, it has to be set aside and used by the public library for the benefit of the public library. It's not a general fund revenue, if you will. I mentioned $20,000 for tax title services. And then at the end of this section, you'll notice this is where we have any necessary or potential tax subsidies for our enterprise programs. So the solid waste subsidy that I'm anticipating at this time is about $176,000 as compared to, we've typically run this between $90,000 and $100,000 most years. This year, as you know, was an anomaly, and they used a lot of their retained earnings rather than a tax subsidy to get through fiscal 20. And with respect to the Camp Kewanee, the recreation enterprise, we're anticipating about $103,000 subsidy required, given that they have no retained earnings left, and their anticipated revenue is $103,000 less than their requested operating funds. So the very bottom section summarizes what is presented to you on the subsequent 4 or 5 pages. This just sort of groups it at a high level, what the department requests are for fixed costs, which is all of our employee benefits, insurance, debt service costs, and then general government, public safety, again, high level education. And so at this time, we have suggested department requests totaling 3.0. I will point out to the board that what's not included in the budget requests is anything to do with a COLA or any wage or contractual adjustments. All of our contractual agreements expire this June. So that 3% is before any cost of living or other economic changes to the collective bargaining agreements. So that's an important distinction for you. And then, as you know, we always have a handful of other articles that are financial that don't rise to the level of being considered capital. So they don't go through our capital committee. And I'm anticipating at this time that that's about $250,000. We have capital requests that exceed the number we have here, but we're suggesting at this time that the capital budget be around $763,000, and that roughly breaks down $463,000 Town of Hanson, $300,000 regional school capital. And again, like we do annually, we're recommending $50,000 be added to the town stabilization fund and $25,000 be added to the school stabilization fund. So again, this is before any real, there's a lot of things in play that John and I will be working on over the next few weeks, but at this point in time, this set of data suggests we've got about a $382,000 shortfall. And as I say, we don't have the collective bargaining agreements fully factored in. We don't have the regional school budget number. We've got a placeholder in here, which I'll point out to the board. But in all likelihood, this projected shortfall is likely to be a little worse before we settle things out.
Quite likely.
So the next few pages just sort of give you, at the level that we present to town meeting, the lines that the moderator typically reads, you see I even dropped in the line numbers, what typically town meeting considers. So with respect, I'll just go through this quickly because this is sort of the beginning of the work we'll all be doing as we go through the public process of getting the budget ready for town meeting. The general government section is up by 1.9%. Public safety is pretty much level funded. And I do want to point out in particular to the board that the police budget in combination with communications is $54,000 less than the current year budget, what we're asking for next year. Again, before contractual settlements. But that was one of the directives from the board, that the chief staff the police in such a way that the net cost would be level or less. And I just want to point out, he's done that.
Well, that is a ray of sunshine. Todd,
Sure.
what, can you, I'm wondering, and it's not a large line item, but what are the expenses exactly for the selectmen administration? Like, what are we looking at that we are spending $23,000 or $25,000 a year? I'm just kind of wondering what that might encompass.
Sure, yeah, John has the printout. I don't have the detail in front of me, but.
So the operating expenses in the selectmen are meetings and memberships are $2,000, advertising, office supplies, those are $1,500 each, about special events, membership, professional dues at the MMA and the MMPA, the Selectmen's Association, again, another $400 for meetings, $6,300 for other expenses, and then copier rental is $11,000.
$400 for meetings? I'm struggling with it, and I know it's not a large amount, but I've been at meetings, every meeting. I haven't missed a meeting, and I just can't figure out what we'd be spending $400 for.
This is if the board attended
meetings and things
attended a meeting outside of the community.
Last year, we spent $393.75 in that line.
Yep.
So.
Municipal managers, municipal
Yeah.
personnel.
They may have been
personnel
meeting,
association.
it's not just us, it's also the town
Association
administrator.
Right, it's the
Okay,
office.
yeah, okay. Thank you, sorry, I don't mean to.
No, that's
throw
fine.
down on something so small.
And I think that also picks up the printing too.
Correct,
For
thank you.
$2,500.
Right.
So it's not just office supplies.
Yeah.
It has the copier rental and the printing of $4,500.
And then the legal expenses obviously, actually, I'm a little surprised that they're lower than they were in 2018.
Well, again, the Finance Committee can attest to this. They've had to consider transfers the last couple of years. And I think, again, absent some major cases or issues with the new administration, I suspect that they can manage.
No, I actually had expected to have smelling salts administered when I saw the legal line for 2019.
Oh,
I thought
see.
it would be a
Yes.
lot higher.
Yes.
So I'm actually gratified that it's, somehow we managed.
As you mentioned, the transfers we do during the year aren't accounted for in this.
Okay,
So when we get a reserve fund transfer request, it's not accounted for.
okay, all right,
So it is actually probably higher. Correct me
Okay.
if I'm wrong, Todd, right?
You're wrong.
So you did-
This is the actual
It is,
that was
okay,
spent,
we
the
do know
budget
that.
was 140.
Okay, so this
They
is-
spent 210. You guys helped them get to 210.
Okay.
Yep,
Perfect.
yep. So,
So when I put in the 140 for this year, coming forward, I was optimistic that we could stay within the 140,000.
we feel
Right.
quite bullish about that, yes.
that's right, that's right. So again, as I say, public safety at this point is essentially level funded overall, which includes police, fire, inspectional services, and the tree warden. The education side of the budget, you'll notice the Whitman Hanson numbers are shaded. These, we don't have numbers from the region yet. So these are our best estimate for the transportation and debt assessments, and a 4% placeholder on the operating line, bringing that to $10,057,000.
And so I'll ask the $1.5 million question. Did you take into consideration the
Statutory.
what appears to be the evolution of what's going to happen, which is the the statutory method, and that we will have a larger bill handed to us as a result
Oh, well,
of that.
this exhibit does not, because the school committee hasn't voted on the budget yet.
Okay, so you're
we
just
will have
acting
an
on what we
updated-
know now.
Yeah, but we all
Okay.
know this is,
The number's gonna be much higher.
thank you.
Yes.
I was trying to think how to say it nicely. Right, so this is the only area of what we're presenting to you that's sort of squishy. We just have a placeholder. We've had nothing from the region to
All right, so you're
help
just
us.
operating on the facts as we know them now.
Yep.
And as things might or might not change, you will respond in kind and adjust and,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah, and the town has been, as you know, very generous. We've funded as much as we were able to afford in recent years, and we're running into a more challenging year, even that aside, with the the issues we have with the two enterprises. So this is just simply a placeholder to not leave the line blank and
Okay.
suggest we have a huge surplus. With respect to Public Works, it's up 3.5%, and you'll see it's mainly, again, suggesting we add $25,000 to the snow budget, which when push comes to shove, we don't have to do. We've historically expended over $500,000 a year over the last 10 years. So, and granted, we had an exceptional year in 2015. But even given that, it's highly unlikely that we won't spend considerably more than the $300,000. We upped the street sweeping by $5,000. As you recall, at the fall town meeting, there was funding to dispose of the sweepings, which were, I think, a few years' worth accumulated. So we've had the highway department build into their budget not only the cost of sweeping, but the cost of disposal. And also in their expense line, the disposal costs related to catch basin cleanings, both of which were, as you recall, funded through an article at the fall town meeting this year. And town fuel is up $10,000. Again, we'll watch that as we watch fuel prices. That number may be able to be moderated a bit. So the public.
I'm
Yes,
sorry, Todd, is there a way for us to extrapolate if that's as a result of increased cost per gallon type of thing?
Oh, sure.
Or increased use?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
We have the data we can absolutely provide
Okay,
that for
I
you.
would be curious to see.
Sure.
What the trending is on that.
Absolutely, yep. So again, but just backing up for a second, so we've got, even with the placeholder, we've got about a 3.9% increase in education. Public Works, with these few adjustments I mentioned, is up about 3.5%. So these are the two highest sort of areas of our operating budget at this point. Human Services, again, we're not projecting any change. This is sort of business as usual, just under 2% increase. It's possible veterans assistance may be able to be reduced a little bit. Other than that, and again, like the entire budget, there's no new staff, no changes to services or programs, as much as one of the things we wanted to do was to introduce a facilities department. We just didn't feel we could come forward to the board knowing what we know, that this just wasn't the right opportunity to begin to get a better handle on our managing our facilities. Culture and recreation, this, as you know, primarily relates to the public library. And again, it's just bringing the existing staff forward and the required spending we need in order to get state aid for materials, which is a lion's share of their expense budget. They're always underfunded for facilities, as the Finance Committee will attest. They've had to approve transfers the last couple of years. We level funded the park expense and patriotic observance. So this area of the budget is up just over 3%. With respect to our fixed costs, debt service, again, as I mentioned, we've got savings due to the refunding of the police station. We've got a few, trying to recall, we're still paying down on the McQuon Street design, which is tied to the larger construction project, but our share. We're paying down on the new fire engine that was, I think, just arrived, from what the chief told me tonight. And what we don't have a handle on yet, which will involve some discussion with the region, is the status and costs associated with the HVAC improvements at the middle school. You'll recall we had 2 different town meeting votes authorizing borrowing. And so we need to get that sort of better understood and coordinated with them. So that's not included in here, although I don't anticipate it's a large expense. Plymouth County Retirement, $100,000 increase to our pension assessment. We're seeing this across the state with funding schedules. And again, this is sort of the less expensive version, if you will. I will tell you that the water department, this is 93% of the assessment. 7% is picked up by the water department in their indirect cost line.
Okay.
And we've been doing that the last few years. Let's see, group insurance, I believe, I don't have the notes in front of me. We're assuming, if you have that, John.
It might be in the book.
Again, the group insurance rates won't be set by the Mayflower group for another month, maybe. So I think, if anything, we've been conservative, and hopefully we can bring this number down.
10 maybe?
Around 10%, yeah.
It's 10%.
I think that's right. And so that budget, which is primarily group insurance for both active employees and retirees, is just under $2.3 million. But we're hopeful that we can make that can come down. So the overall fixed area of the budget is up nearly 5%, bringing us to a total departmental request, again, without any contractual impact of contract bargaining for staff, is at 3.0%. The last page just summarizes for you the water budget and the 2 enterprises. And so, as I mentioned under my quarterly report, the water department, you'll notice there's a 16% increase in the request as compared to the current year budget. And the lion's share of this relates to the debt service, all of the debt service that we issued in November. So this is the permanent debt for the water tank repair, for the water main replacement, and the new meter program.
Okay.
So, and those have been on the radar for the water department for a few years. We've been doing temporary borrowings and paying down as we could, but the remainder that we needed to issue, we went out to the number of years we were allowed to, and you'll notice their debt service line is up substantially. This will likely require some sort of a rate increase. I'm not suggesting the rate increase would be 16%, but it could be, certainly high single digits, if not a little more.
You'll work with the water.
We'll work with the water department on that to give you an update. But that's certainly a change and something for you to be aware of. I mentioned earlier both the recreation and the solid waste enterprises. They've presented fair budgets, but their revenues don't fully support this level of operation. And again, that's why on the cover page we're carrying $103,000 $500 as a tax subsidy for Camp Kawani and $176,000 subsidy for the solid waste program. They both have utilized their existing savings or retained earnings. That's not available as we've been using it a little bit each year. It's not there to use, given what we did to make this year work. And as I say, the solid waste one I'm a little more concerned about because we're still not sure what the new disposal costs will be after July 1st. We're only looking at rates, I think, through June 30th and likely increased costs thereafter. I'm not sure that's fully factored into their budget request. So that 4.5% increase could be higher, if you will. And the recreation budget is down 12%, but I just point out to you that we, in the fall, fully paid off the debt for the septic system project, which was in excess. The project was in excess of $300,000, and the town, the rec department used $55,000 of their retained earnings to make a payment, and then the fall town meeting paid off the balance of $150,000. So that will not recur, but that was funded from retained earnings. So good news, bad news. So it's a bit sobering. It's a challenging few months we all have ahead of us. And as you say, Laura, once we factor in a better number for the regional schools, it gets more challenging.
Yes.
At that point, I'll take any questions, or I'll jump into capital real quick.
Anybody have any questions? Lay it on us, Todd.
Okay. So the board had asked Mary and I a while back to get a bit more involved with the capital budget, to perhaps help do some preliminary work to help the capital committee and sort of hone in on prioritizing the town's needs. And so what we have for you is a 2-page exhibit that outlines potentially the next 5 years of capital requirements. And we worked with departments to prioritize and reorganize some of these items in terms of when it made sense. So what you have before you, and hopefully your copies are in color. So certain items are highlighted in color, and at the bottom of the second page, we've taken a first step to sort of tie those colors to sources of funds. And as you know, we typically have not been able to use any of our recurring revenues to support capital. We've had to rely on free cash and borrowing and other sources of funds. So we're also showing use of water surplus, community preservation funds for certain projects, and the ambulance receipt account in order to replace the ambulance in a few years, and heart monitor and defibrillators. And so, you know, that's not to say everything will make its way through this year, but you'll notice the use of free cash suggested is $463,500 for all of the items that are not in color. This does not include any capital needs from the schools. Again, I'm not aware that the school committee has voted on their capital. The capital requests were due to the capital committee in December. Mary was able to get a multi-page listing from the region late last week, but it doesn't appear to be prioritized in any fashion that we can interpret. So we've again put a placeholder in of $300,000. There are, as you will recall, there are some school capital items that we funded last May that Whitman didn't. So if those projects are still in the queue for next year, we will have already funded a couple of them. If they come off the table, we have that as a source of funds to apply to a new school project
Interesting.
through a
And
vote
how-
of town meeting.
Okay, and how much, do you recall how much that was?
Well, the
in
big one
aggregate?
was the roadway, and again, I don't have,
83?
yeah, but there were 2 or 3 that we funded that Whitman didn't, particularly for the high school, as I recall.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for putting the effort in. This is the clearest articulation of a capital plan that I have seen ever. And it is a work of art.
Great.
And it's amazing, and I really appreciate it. Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
Just one question
Yes.
on capital improvement.
Sure.
Our capital plan here. For the backhoe, we have it a few years out.
Yes.
Have we chatted with Highway to see if they would want the backhoe sooner than a hydraulic chipper? I mean, I understand the sums are different and whatnot, and it's all a
Right.
balancing act.
This actually, their original request was in a different order than you see here. And in working with them, and we had an interim superintendent, as you know, who provided really good input. And I've subsequently sat with the new superintendent. We feel that's okay. The other thing we've been able to do is reestablish a good working relationship with the water department. So there's some sharing of equipment and resources. So that's not to say a year from now we don't come back and have that moved up. But the current thinking is that this is their priority. And as you can see, it's, they need a substantial amount each year, but it's spread out over the 5 years and it's well thought out, understanding the town can't replace or buy all this equipment in one shot.
Yep.
So yeah, we had really good input from all of the departments. And, Billy with the Recreation Department did a really nice job on the Camp Kawani Recreation Capital, which you'll see on the second page. Well thought out. And we've phased some of the things, for example, the enlarging of the waterfront and the cabin upgrades. You'll see they didn't ask for it all in 1 year. They said we can phase these and do it over a couple of years, understanding that there's only so much to go around to fund all of the town's needs.
Just an FYI, enlarging the waterfront may be CPC eligible.
Right, thank you. That's
So,
right.
and I didn't, that wasn't coded that way, so.
No, at this point it hasn't been. Yeah, we haven't had a lot of dialogue with the CPC yet. So we really, at this point, suggested any improvements to the former Plymouth County Hospital property. The SCBA equipment, I think I may have, that would be through a grant. I apologize. So the orange or peach, whatever that color is both community preservation and the opportunity to pursue grants. And the fire department is pursuing a grant for the replacement of the SCBA equipment. So that's why that's the same. But so it's just the Plymouth County Hospital property that would at this time be suggested from CPC funds.
All right, that's great.
One quick question.
Sure.
On the debt service and the operating budget?
Yes.
This is what we have on the books right now?
Yes.
Not factoring in what may or may not happen?
That's correct.
Proposed borrowings?
Right, so if we had proposed borrowings, just for example, what we'd likely do is by the time the projects got started, it would be into fiscal '21. We'd issue debt at some point during the year, likely for a year, temporary debt. So our first debt payment or interest payment would be due in FY '22 if the project, got started right away. In some cases, these projects take a while, and we do kind of like small temporary borrowings. We'll borrow what we need, and work our way up to the town authorization. But there wouldn't be any impact until at the earliest '22.
Okay, any questions? Okay, as usual, excellent job, really deeply appreciated, Todd.
My pleasure.
And it definitely helps set the framework for what is to come.
Right.
Did you guys have any comments you wanted to make, or?
All the fun's just beginning.
Yes, well, I think that might be the understatement. Okay, and thank you guys for all of your hard work and partnership. We appreciate it, and I hope we're going to keep those lines of communication open because we're going to really need to talk to one another. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving right along, there's really no way to totally segue to it. Chief Mix, we have police chief requests. Okay. Okay.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm going to do a quick overview as to why I'm here tonight. Mainly to request 2 appointments and a promotion. Obviously, they're not here. We'll go through that with, hopefully you'll take my recommendations and appoint them, and at some other time we'll bring them in, the new officers. And the promoted officers, bring them in to recognize them. Let me start off by Sergeant Andrews, Eugene Andrews. Gene's been a police officer for over 32 years in Hanson. He has told me he will be retiring effective February 24th of 2020. With that being said, with him retiring, I would request that the board appoint him as a special police officer upon his retirement. So the effective date of that would be February 24th of 2020.
Yep, that's what you've got here, yep. Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that Sergeant Gene Andrews be appointed as a special police officer in the town of Hanson effective February 24th, 2020.
Second?
Second. Oh, sorry.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, moving right along, Chief.
So obviously with Sergeant Andrews' retirement, that means somebody else, I need somebody else as a sergeant. I need supervision with the newer officers. So if you recall, about a year ago, we did an assessment center. From the assessment center, I established a list for promotions. We promoted Alicia Sullivan, now Durgan, from that list. She had topped it. The number 2 person on the list is Jared Megan. And since the list is still good, and along with the contractual agreements, as well as I have a lot of faith in Jared to be a good supervisor. He's a good officer. I would ask the board that they vote to promote Jared to the rank of sergeant, and that would be effective March 2nd of 2020.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that Officer Jared Megan be promoted to the rank of police sergeant in the town of Hanson effective March 2nd, 2020.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, and last but not least, Chief.
So last but not least, I have an opening right now. I have a vacancy. Obviously, when Sergeant Andrews goes, I'm going to have another vacancy. That being said, I have to fill them. Right now, in the police world, it's not easy to fill these vacancies. I used to have people fighting for them. Now, it's difficult to not only get good candidates, but to even get a decent pool of good candidates is becoming increasingly difficult. One of the things that I did do with the opening that I had, the vacancy I had, was we had advertised for what I refer to as a lateral. So a full-time trained officer from another town that may want to come join us. Usually I would get 40 plus applicants for that. I got 3. From the 3, 1 did not meet the criteria, didn't have a full-time academy that certified him in Massachusetts. The other individual appears to be going to another town, and that left me with, and I don't want to make it sound like he was last, because when you look at everything, he was first. That leaves me with Corey Arsenal as a potential lateral. Corey grew up here in town, graduated Whitman Hanson High School. Upon graduating, went into the Marine Corps, where he was an intelligence analyst. He had an outstanding 5 years in the Marine Corps. When he came out, he actually started to work for us as a public safety dispatcher part-time. Did a great job. Situate took him on as a part-time officer and then put him on full-time, where he completed the Plymouth Police Academy last August. He wants to come home And when I mean home, he literally lives back in town again, too. So he's a resident again, and I would love to take him back. Good employee. The Plymouth Police Academy director could not speak highly enough of him as a student, as well as some of the staff over there. And again, when he worked for us, he did a good job. He's an intelligent young man, very dedicated. And I would appreciate it if you would allow me to hire him and take him on February 10th, as of February 10th, 2020. And the only thing left that I need to do with Corey, there'd be a conditional offer that he needs to have a physical.
I'd like to make a motion that upon successful completion of a physical, Mr. Corey J. Arsenault be appointed as a full-time police officer and liquor control agent in the town of Hanson, effective February 10th, 2020.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, great.
Thank you very, very much. They're going to be, all of them are going to be very excited.
Well,
I know
we're
Gene's
thrilled.
excited to retire, so more excited I could keep him on.
Ask you a quick question. With Sergeant Andrews leaving on the 24th, but then you're not going to promote me until the 3rd
month. Yeah, there's a couple of things. When somebody retires, I owe them accrued benefits. So to help make sure the money's there, I need to do that. Plus, Sergeant Andrews has been working full-time right now on the missing individual, missing woman. So I've got the supervision covered, but when he's gone completely, I need that supervisor back. So that it works out well this way.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Thank you all
Thank you
very
so
much. I
much,
appreciate it.
Chief. Keep up the good work, and thank the guys for us.
I will, thank you.
All right, moving right along.
Good night, Mary.
Good night, Mary.
Good night, Mary.
Thank you very much.
We've got accept the December donations, and that's in your packet. Did everybody have a chance to look at them? And if so, I will entertain a motion.
The next one was item 4, was execute the warrant for the primaries.
Okay, I'm sorry. Was there a motion for that?
I don't, Greer just left, I think she has it here.
Okay, well, it will take us 5 seconds to do the donations. Is Greer coming back?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, okay, we can,
Mary's got a ton of stuff.
okay, so,
I'd like to make a motion to accept the December 2019 donations.
So moved.
all in favor?
I mean, second.
I knew what you meant. And Greer wasn't here to correct you, so.
No.
Okay, great. And I'm just trying to, I don't want to make the wrong motion on this.
We're on to number 7?
Yeah.
Yes. I think the motion would be something like.
Oh, no, I've got the motion for that. I don't know, I don't have the motion for the, for executing the warrant for the presidential primaries.
Okay.
So, Mr. Hickey, did you want to
Sure.
make a motion?
Vacancy on the planning board has been created by the resignation of member Stephen A. Regan, effective December 30th, 2019. The 3 years remaining on Mr. Regan's term would be filled at the May 16th, 2020 town election if the board votes to place the vacant position on the ballot. I would suggest the following motion. I'd like to move that the town clerk place on the May 16th, 2020 town election ballot the 3-year term for the planning board created by the resignation of Stephen Regan.
And I will accept a second to that.
Second.
Okay, but I do want to discuss it. I'm totally fine with that, putting it on the warrant, but there is an interim period between now and when the election happens, and I have asked for this to be placed on our February 11th warrant, where we would have a similar procedure to what we had with the Board of Health, where we will jointly appoint somebody, if anybody steps forward, to fill that vacancy until such time as the election happens. So that said, all in favor?
Can I just ask, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
So has 3 years remaining on the term. How long is that term?
I think they can be like 4 and 5 years, depending upon, I don't know what his particular term was of when he got elected, but I think he just got elected last year, but it can be like a 4-year term. And I think he just got elected this year again for the term.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, all in favor? Greer, just to clarify, Mr. Hickey just made the motion to to post the vacancy on the planning board on the May election ballot.
Okay.
Which is totally fine, but as we had discussed, we're going to have the planning board come, or at least they're invited to come, on the February 11th meeting.
Yes.
To appoint somebody in the interim until the election, to fill that vacancy until the election.
May I ask who seconded?
Kenny did.
Kenny.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
That said, and it was just unanimously approved. That said, I do not have, is there a particular motion we should be making for executing the warrant for the March 3rd, 2020 primaries?
Very simply, that you move to execute the warrant for the...
Okay, I'll entertain that motion. Okay.
Second.
It just sounded very formal, so I didn't want to, misstep. All in favor? Okay.
Also, while you're at it, we voted to accept the donations too, item 6.
Yep.
I made the motion, and I think Mr. Hickey seconded it. Greer.
Got that?
I got it.
We're clipping right along. You can't step out for seconds. We're cooking with gas tonight.
Stop blinking, Greer.
Exactly. Okay, and that brings us to old business, which is Board of Health to discuss the temporary contract with New Bedford Waste and payment of outstanding balances. We're already in session. Did you guys already call your meeting to order? Okay. Okay. Okay, well, we are anxiously awaiting an update. The last we heard of this very sad saga was when we had the gentleman from New Bedford Waste come in, tell us about his travails with China and the commodities and all of that. And it just sounded like a confluence of extremely bad luck, bad things happening in every phase of his business model that could possibly even happen.
Yeah, it's happening to everybody.
Yeah, and it is happening to everybody. And Matt and I both attended the Mass Municipal Association conference this weekend. They had a seminar about it. Everybody's struggling with this, so it's out there. It's not a situation unique to Hanson. The last we heard from that gentleman was that they had purportedly put somebody on notice at Town Hall, we didn't know who, he didn't know who, that they were going to increase the costs. We said, gee, you can't unilaterally increase the costs. Mr. Hickey stepped in and exercised diplomacy, which allowed us to keep that the transfer station open with the recyclables through the crisis of the post-Christmas season, which was fantastic. And I know you've been, or various people, I think, town administrator and town council have been working on a negotiation. So I'm not sure who to cue it up to give us the current up-to-date status.
I have not been updated. Town council. The last I knew, it was going to go to town council, and town council was going to talk to their attorney and work something out.
Okay.
And then I never got any information past that.
That's not like Teresa.
Do we have any idea what's going on with that?
I can tell you.
Oh, great, Teresa.
So, when Mr. LaCamera was here, he had said 110 per ton for recycling. That's what I put in. Town council came up with this contract and through the end of the fiscal year. However, John spoke to him last week and Mr. LaCamera came up with 125 for recycling, correct?
Right, but the agreement was 110.
So the agreement, and Mary and Greer did look at the tape from the meeting when we were all attending, and he said clearly 110 per ton. I don't know where he's coming up with, I don't know where he's coming up with that. So 110 through the end of the fiscal year. Whether they'll agree to that, I don't know.
Okay, so that still hasn't been executed. So right now, we're in a very nebulous area where they're continuing to provide services, and what are we doing in the way of paying our bills? Are we paying the old fee? Have we transitioned to
I
the?
received 2 invoices. The invoice for November, I paid at the previous rate,
$65.98.
Yeah, that they had given us a couple years ago. The December invoice just came in, and I was going to pay the 95, which is what they said for December, and 72, which is what their new billing as of November.
Okay.
Come January 1st, the 110, and they've increased the municipal solid waste to $93.75 a ton.
And where is town council on that?
The only thing that I've gotten from town council, received from town council, is the contract that they typed up. I don't know that they sent it to New Bedford Waste.
Okay, so I think we've got some follow-ups here. We need to have town council figure out, I'm digging deep to be diplomatic, why there may be a difference in what was stated at our meeting and what he appears to be saying now. And I'm certainly hoping this is not a foreshadowing of a trend. So we need to nail that down, and then we need to figure out forensically, in terms of the billing that has happened thus far, what is town council's opinion about what we should be paying and what we should not be paying? Because what he was indicating was that we were in arrears, which was why there was the impending threat of shutting off services, and I want to know that that has been settled with attorney to attorney, that they're not still saying that. Yes,
I believe
Teresa.
Mary had a conversation with him that the town would perhaps be willing to pay $7,500 towards the outstanding balance. Whether they agreed to that, I don't know.
I talked, when I spoke with him, he agreed to the 7,500 verbally, but I'm not sure if attorney into attorney, they've talked at all, but that's.
Okay, so I just think, since we've already had a series of missed encounters and miscommunications and disconnects, I would very strongly suggest that any conversation that we have with them is always followed up with an email, a confirmatory email. We spoke on this date, this is what you said. Could you please reply and confirm that this is what you said? And then I also would like to get a status report from our council on where they think this all is, because this is a lot of moving parts, and I really don't expect Teresa to have to keep track of it, or Gil or Arlene or Dennis. That's beyond the pale. We should be getting a regular report back. Maybe they have, and perhaps have been giving it to Mary. She's had a lot going on, trying to onboard you and kind of transition out. So perhaps they have, and if they have, great. Then we just want to get that update. Okay, so. What else did you want to speak with us about this evening?
That was it.
Okay, so is there any action that needs to be taken, or?
I don't know. They continue to pick up.
Yes, Mr. Amato.
Pick up on it, but I think that, myself, I've been researching other avenues for us to go.
Yes.
Because of the fact that I'm not totally comfortable with the business model. It's kind of not good at all. I've reached out to a couple of different companies looking into the situation, and some of the prices are a little bit different. Transportation equipment's a lot higher than what companies want, but I think researching another avenue just in case.
I think that's a really great idea, and also somebody posted something that I would love to see if you can track down, because it's kind of intriguing, which is this concept, and it would require some behavioral changes, but it's a concept of taking compost out of the stream, and there's a company that picks it up for a fee, and the reason, and that might sound like, oh, well, why would we want to do that? Because it would ultimately, the weight of what they're picking up would be tremendously reduced by the fact that we wouldn't have all that food material, plus it's better in terms of recycling. So I'm wondering, I'll see if I can look up the name of it. It was on the Green Hanson Facebook page. Did you, I'm looking at that.
That's
Oh.
residential, and then they've not.
I don't know, oh, so you did look at that? Oh, because I sent it to you.
South
Yeah.
Shore Recycling, we had that company doing a presentation about a year and
Okay,
a half ago.
and they only do residential?
Residential, and I know at some point I have a flyer somewhere at home that tells you, so people can set it up. The problem with doing it at the transfer station is people are gonna throw contaminants in and you don't know where it's coming from. If you're doing it residential and they're picking it up every week, if there's a contaminant, they know that it came from you and they know to teach you how to do it properly.
Okay.
And it's not a large fee.
It seems super reasonable. I was trying to look for like, what's the downside of this? And I couldn't see any. I wasn't sure if it was scalable on a larger, to municipalities or,
To make sure that the product that we were giving them was not, we can't.
That makes sense.
To not contaminate
Yeah.
the recycling.
Yeah.
And it would be too hard to do that. And it's a nominal fee.
Yeah.
And people can do it at home if they don't want to do composting at home, but they want to get the waste out of the trash.
Okay. Yeah, and Mr. Amato, I think it's a great idea for you to just kind of keep pursuing a parallel track.
2021.
Yeah.
DEP is planning on banning food waste in the mainstream.
Oh, okay. And also, were you guys here for the budget update or not? I don't know when you guys came in. It's not on the agenda, so we can't really discuss, but I just want to kind of put the bee in your bonnet to think about how do we move forward and try to reduce overall costs so that we're not having.
Knowing that our costs are going up.
Yeah, it's like just again, like you're getting hit by all the same factors that this guy got hit with in his business model. Any other concerns or thoughts, or anybody have anything they wanted to add to that discussion? No? Mr. O'Connell, I don't have my glasses on, but you looked like you wanted to say something. Okay, all right.
Just everybody's getting aware, this is just happening in town here, so it's happening everywhere.
Absolutely.
Prices
Yep.
are up and down, everybody's going by market value pricing and whatnot.
I was just saying-
Transportation's up, We have a very efficient transfer station. We meet all the bans and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like I say, the only ban is coming up with a food waste ban, and there's gonna be a big battery coming to the next year.
Now, how are you guys, I'm sure you guys are working on a communication plan and education plan of how to tell people what these various bans are, what it means, and all that type of thing?
And there are other towns that have had the same problem, and they refused to do the increase with this company and found somebody else. Other towns in South Shore.
I mean, I have to be honest with you, it did get my Irish up a bit, and that was my first, knee-jerk reaction. But I'm trying to be like, okay, this is an industry issue,
Right.
We can work through it. So,
We don't want to be in the position where in January we get an increase, and then come November, he sends us another letter with 3 days' notice saying, oh, by the way, it's going to go up another $20.
Yeah, that's the thing is, we want to we appreciate that his costs have gone up while his revenue has gone down from the commodity piece of it. But, and that there's some degree of not being able to predict those swings. But in such a short period of time to go up it just doesn't feel right to me. And I think that's the same sense you've got. And so that's why I encourage you, Mr. Amato, to go with your gut instincts and keep seeing what we might have out there for other options.
I think Mr. Amato was right just on the business model part of it. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know about everyone else, but I think for me, it was basically that this man was communicating with Hanson, with a town administrator who was two administrators gone, and a health agent who had left town before.
I had no idea who he said he was communicating with.
Well, we do now. I mean, we know who he was communicating with, and neither one of them have been in Hanson for years.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like he was just sending off random, I guess. So that's a business model. That's all I'm saying. Enough. That's a business model.
I don't get a response. We make a phone call.
Well,
But that's my.
who wouldn't?
All right, well.
I would say, we have to realize that from what I've researched so far, and what I've known in the past, in New England area, there are only two companies who can handle Hanson's Waste, and any other property. And I've been in communication with both those companies. There's just no way that, it is so bad out there right now.
He basically said, you want to shop around, knock yourself out. I mean, he basically said that to us. So he didn't seem particularly threatened by us potentially pulling our business, so.
He said he was operating at a deficit, and please, if you could move your account, please do. That's what he said.
Actually, he did say that, yeah. Thank you for triggering me and reminding me of that whole flashback. Thank you, Dennis. Okay, all right, well, great. All right, thank you. We appreciate it. I don't know if you guys want to adjourn your portion of the meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
All right. We're going to take a brief recess for about 3 minutes or so.
Cake?
Huh?
Cake?
You can have cake if you want, but you're going to have to bust in on conservation because I think they're in that room. We are back from our brief recess, and we are moving along with our extremely ambitious agenda. And next up is the operational forensic. We are passing over the Highway Director update on Complete Streets project. And we will have Mr. Cahill here, hopefully on the 11th of February, which is our next meeting. Operational and forensic regional school audit. Mr. Stanbrook, did you want to give any type of an update on that?
So I've been working with the Whitman Town Administrator, Frank Lynham, about setting up what we spoke about earlier with just a regional school audit, going into the operations. I have I know it's like a draft of what something like this bid would look like, to trying to get someone to do it. I've been working on bid thresholds and qualifications with him. Depending on how much it is, there are certain procurement laws that you have to go by. And I've still been working with them on it. So right now we're kind of in a holding pattern. Last time Whitman had some qualifications that they wanted to add. I haven't seen the qualifications that they wanted to add yet. I can add them, and then we could go ahead, and see what they want to do.
I think that that would be a good idea. I know that Mr. LaMattina and Mr. Evans both had expressed some tweaking that they wanted, which I believe you received copies of. And my understanding is that we're a green light to continue along the audit path. And so I think whatever you could do to work with Mr. Lyman in expediting said process would be amazing. And so that's great. The regional school district FYI 21 budget, I'm sure that you are all aware that next Wednesday, which I believe is the 5th, we have been invited to the unveiling of the FY21 school district budget. In speaking with Chairman Hayes of the school committee, they are not anticipating taking any votes that night. It is merely going to be a discussion of what the budget might look like. And then, as is always the case, there will be sharpening of pencils, there will be discussions, and they will be refining the budget to a number that actually will become a budget that the school committee will then vote on. And I, out of an abundance of caution, did ask Greer to double post that meeting so that it's posted as the selectmen's meeting, just in case we all show up and decide to deliberate the heck out of things, then we don't have to have any issues with open meeting law violations. Okay, so there's that. And then there is the formation of a deregionalization committee. Now, I put this on here. I'm sorry to torture you guys, but I got my little notes here. I put the deregionalization and the override committee on there, and I do want to have a discussion about it. And I put those on the agenda because I've been getting some feedback, and I thought it was important to be responsive and just talk about it as a committee. So here's my little notes. As you all know, the towns of Whitman and Hanson entered into a regional agreement in 1993, which spelled out that a per-pupil methodology would be used for apportioning the school assessment. This methodology has been used without fail every year since then. In late August of this year, we were told for the first time that there might be another methodology to apportion the school assessment for the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District between the two towns of Whitman and Hanson. We now know that this method is referred to as the statutory method, which uses a, quote, wealth-based formula that takes into consideration the average household income and home value for determining the minimum contribution each town must make to the regional school district. According to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, aka DESE, this methodology should have been taken into consideration every year since 2012. Moreover, DESE has opined that historically the school committee should have been not only voting on the budget, but also voting on whether to use the per-pupil method spelled out in the agreement or the statutory default method. As a result of all of this, it is Whitman's leadership position that Whitman paid more than they were required to historically as a direct result of the statutory method not being used. This in turn has led them to draw a line in the sand indicating that from this point on, at least for this year, they will not support any other assessment methodology other than the statutory method. And both their Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee have formally put the school district and the school committee on notice that this is their position. And while I believe that the decent and ethical thing to do would have been to enter into good faith negotiations with Hanson on a revised regional agreement and worked on a phased-in approach, those options are presently not on the table as a result of the position that Whitman leadership has taken to implement the statutory immediately. And again, this is for this year. I'm not saying that it's never going to happen. But there are checks and balances inherent in any school budget decisions, such as the school committee vote on assessment and on budget. That's the good news. The bad news is that currently the school committee consists of a total of 10 members, with 6 being from Whitman and 4 being from Hanson. In January, the school committee took a vote, 6-4, with Whitman 4 and Hanson against, using the statutory method of assessment. Now, when we had Kate Feardoff come, she was very clear that as they move forward with the budget, the vote will need to be 7 votes for the budget to be passed. Unfortunately, the DESE regulations and the composition of the Whitman-Hanson Regional School Committee have combined to present a real challenge to Hanson's fiscal health this year and potentially in the future. And you might be asking yourself what the town of Hanson could do about its current predicament. And it's my intention tonight to talk about a few of those things that I think could be options. One of them is obviously negotiating a change to the current regional agreement. Another thing is the formation of a deregionalization committee to study possible deregionalization. Another is the formation of an override committee, in essence, to acknowledge that most likely this year we may need to have an override. And then another, and I'm not saying these are the only options, would be obtaining special counsel for a second opinion or litigation. So I'll briefly go over each one of these. Negotiating a change to the current regional agreement. There are several avenues that we might pursue to determine if, despite DESE regulations and the composition of the school committee, whether we might adopt some hybrid method of assessment. To that end, as you guys know, Mary, Matt, and I have been meeting with Randy, Justin, and Frank from Whitman to determine if there might be a path forward where one town is not unfairly disadvantaged. We've decided that the only way to determine what is equitable to get a breakdown of the cost to educate the children in each town, taking into account revenue and expenses, and that's why we're doing the audit that we're doing. We simply do not have the facts. We do not know cost versus revenue for each town, so I can't tell you what it should cost us to educate our children or what it should cost Whitman, and how can we even open up the regional agreement without that information. I just want to make sure that you guys are still on board with the audit, that you understand why we're doing it, and there seems to be some kind of a notion that perhaps, this is sending a message about the confidence level that we've got of the school district, and that is not the case. This is simply, we need facts to do our job, and I'm going to keep repeating it until people actually believe what I'm saying, that we've got a fiduciary responsibility and we cannot make decisions without being armed with the facts. That's what we're looking for. Now, formation of deregionalization committee. I can't tell you how many times I've been asked about the viability of deregionalizing. And there's a lot of different shades of deregionalization. It could be K through 8, it could be altogether deregionalization. But regardless of which option is pursued, clearly deregionalization will not do anything to immediately solve the fiscal or contractual problems we're facing this year. In addition, I ultimately don't think that deregionalization is going to be proven to be in the best interest of the town, given the buyout costs and the fact that you have to set up a separate administration and overhead costs. But as I mentioned, people are asking about it and have expressed that yeah, and I've actually even heard people say, well, yeah, it might cost us more, but at least we would retain more control over this situation, and we wouldn't be left feeling like we don't have full control over our own destiny and how much we're spending for the schools. And I understand that frustration. So Bob Hayes has committed to having their new business manager, John Tuffy, gather the data necessary to get a sense of what the impact of the deregionalization would be. Obviously, we're going to have a sanity check done by John Stanbrook and Todd just to, take a look at that, but they'll take a first cut. And I've got the formation of the deregionalization committee on our agenda tonight, but I think in light of the fact we haven't gotten those numbers yet, that it may be a little bit premature to form a committee. We also don't really know the budget numbers, so I don't want to put the cart before the horse. I'd like to get a sense of those numbers and then what the budget is and kind of where they go with that. So it's my suggestion that we defer the formation of a deregionalization committee until or even actually the discussion of it, but potentially the formation until some point in early March. Formation of override committee. Given where we are at in the budget process with the district budget being presented next Wednesday, and given that the Whitman leadership has insisted upon the use of the statutory method, I think Hanson needs to discuss how we will respond to an increase in our assessment that is projected to be, and this is a really rough number, and it keeps changing, $1.5 million more than we would have paid under the per pupil method. While this board is absolutely committed to judicious financial practices, depending upon the outcome of the school committee meetings, the harsh reality is that we may be required to vote on an override in order to meet the school budget demands, and I think we even heard from Todd tonight some of our other demands. Ultimately, with such a vote, the taxpayers will decide what the district should or should not be getting for a school assessment. That said, we need to be prepared to pivot quickly to respond to the need for an override, so I've placed that on the agenda for tonight. And lastly, I want this board to think about how far we want to go to seek legal remedies to address the fact that we have a valid regional agreement in place. Should we contemplate litigations as others have done, and or should we get a second legal opinion? I also want to discuss the most effective way to get information out about this issue. How do we get everybody out in town engaged? And I'm not trying to riot people. I just want people to know what's going on so that when we have this town meeting, people are well informed and they understand the steps that we've taken and what's led us to this point. And I feel as though there are some very well informed people who have taken the time to keep themselves informed and tortured themselves by watching various YouTube videos of replays of meetings. But I think the vast majority of people really don't fully comprehend. And at this point, there really isn't anything for people to respond to because we don't know the whole story yet, but we're getting closer and closer to that. And so I just want to think about how do we do a better job about engaging people and make sure that we're getting feedback from a cross-section of everybody who's paying taxes in town and what their viewpoint is. And so I just want to wrap up, and I'm sorry to torture you by reading this extremely long statement. Please know that in everything that we all do here, we're trying to balance the many competing priorities that we have in town, and we do that with a focus on what is best for Hanson and its residents. These months leading up to our May town meeting are sure to be filled with tension and anxiety for all involved. I'm committed to continuing to work with our town administrator, our financial team, the district, obviously the board, and even our peers in Whitman to try to make decisions that are fact-based in the best interest of the town and in the best interest of the children. I know that it will be a challenge to keep that commitment in the face of divisiveness, but I remain committed to doing it nonetheless, and I urge each of you to join me in making the same commitment. And that's all I've got to say about that. And so I will open it up for discussion about the formation of the deregionalization committee. I don't know if you guys agree that it might be premature to do that.
I think it's definitely premature to do that.
Okay.
You know,
Any-
I think, because,
okay.
you know, I'm still hopeful that this is gonna work out, you know, I'm hopeful that Whitman's gonna wanna sit down and, you know, come to the table, but I think the deregionalization at this point is definitely premature, in my opinion.
Anybody disagree with that?
No,
All right,
not
so
at
let's
all.
move on to, what about the formation of an override? Should we wait until we are a little bit further along with the numbers and we have a sense, although I don't, even if it's, you know, a lot less than I think it is, it's clear with some of what Todd's telling us, it's edging in that direction. I don't want to be an alarmist, but again, we don't have the full picture. So I just wanted to put it out there to noodle it, think about it. We don't have to form it tonight, but think about if we do, who would we want on that, and we can discuss it at a future meeting. You guys okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to see numbers.
Yes.
Before we.
I don't want to react to anything that isn't there to react to right now. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. And then in terms of getting a second opinion and litigation, we'll have a chat with our legal counsel, and then I think we'll take that under advisement if you guys agree that that's the approach. But more to come, and I appreciate that we're all working together, and I couldn't think of a better group of people to handle this problem with, so I appreciate that, and we're thrilled to have John on board because he knows how to slice and dice the numbers, and we really need that. Okay. Did anybody have anything they wanted to say about that I might not have covered?
About your statement?
Or anything about any of this stuff?
The one meeting that I went to at the high school with that whole group of people, it was 910,000. You just said 1.5 million.
Well, that's because the new numbers are in now, so what we just.
So it went up another 600,000.
Again, I did say it was very rough. I said it was very rough, okay? And this could change.
And the other thing, don't forget, the 1.3 million is based on this existing budget. So when we deal with fiscal '21, that's gonna go up.
That's why
Well, that's what I asked the superintendent, and based on those numbers, at the 9-10, 2 years from now, it was going to be 1.2. Now it's obviously way higher. Yeah.
It's a bit of shifting sands, I'm gonna be honest with you, and so that's why, like, we really don't even know. Like, give me the number and then we'll talk. Like, just let's get the number. And you know, I have no doubt John and Todd will help us through the process of discerning and parsing through the numbers. Okay. Mr. Dyer, anything on that? Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay, great. Thank you for indulging me. Moving on, 2020 annual license renewal, Hanson Manor Lodging House. Is there a reason why this was taken off of the list of the?
We had not received the documents back from him along with the fee. So now we have all of that in place.
Okay. Okay, so did anybody want to make a motion on that?
So moved.
Okay. All in favor? Okay, and is this your first official town administrator's
Yes.
report? This is wildly exciting.
Too.
Yeah. Okay.
No, just settling in for my first month. Thank you very much. I'm settling in for my first month here in Hanson. Everyone's been very warm and welcoming. Mary and Greer have been fantastic to work with. Mary's been an invaluable resource. She's just fantastic. It was a pleasure to meet all individually with you, to get all your unique perspectives on what's going on in the town. And I've also met with most of the department heads one-on-one to discuss their particular situations. I'm going to get around to everybody as soon as I possibly can. From the last meeting, you had two actions that you wanted to see, and it was a mass trail support letter. You wanted me to send in a support letter for our Mass Trails grant. That I did send that letter in. I handed it to Mr. Clemens. It was signed, so that's all set and ready to go. And also, you requested me to write a letter about the audit that we spoke of earlier, requesting the cooperation from the school committee and the superintendent, and I did do that, and that went out.
That was good. That was very good.
Thank you. Under new business, for me anyway, January 14th, I held my first department head meeting, a very cooperative and collegial group, and I hope I'm going to be holding those meetings every month. Going to try to keep them moving so it's not hours and hours. We're going to talk about things, talk about everything we need to talk about, get out of there as soon as we can. Let's say everything we need to say, but let's not just.
They're an amazing group. It's a really good energy.
It's very well-rounded group and a
Yep.
good. It makes me feel good that we have these type of talented people working for the town. I attended a regional dispatch meeting with Michael Mahoney from the Regional Old Colony Communication Center, or the ROC. So the ROC is building a new building in Duxbury. He said that he had come before you and spoke about the region in the past, and he was open to the idea of coming in to give some sort of progress update in the future. You give something to talk about or think about, maybe on a future agenda.
We'd love that, because frankly, it's been a minute since we've heard from them, so I think we would like to hear from them.
And also, maybe to schedule a tour or something when the building is complete in Duxbury.
Definitely.
That'd be something worth going by, see what they're doing. I have noticed that the town's website does need some updating and refreshing with current information. That's going to be one of the topics at the next department head meeting, to get everyone marshaled to try to get rolling on the website. I have met with the chair and a resident regarding an open space acquisition request that came before the Community Preservation Committee. I'll be following up on that request with the resident's request, and see where we are in the process, and see if we can get the request moving through the Community Preservation people. I also attended a meeting with Highway Director Matt Cahill and a representative from Mass DEP regarding the status of the town's MS4 permit. MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. And that's a permit from the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, to discharge stormwater into waterways. And it's a 5-year process of identifying and mitigating any stormwater pollution runoff. And I have more information on that if you're interested. But it was a very informative meeting with Matt and the person from DEP. The request for information for the Muckwon School reuse for senior housing went out with a due date of, it was initially, I think it was February 11th, and they moved it back to the 18th. Is that what, no, I think.
It's February.
I have the old
10th.
date here, it just happened.
I
believe the due date is February 18th. For the request of information, our vendor requested that. There's been a lot of interest, but a lot of people were saying they didn't have time to respond, given we kind of pushed things back a little bit until February 18th.
Can you walk me through, there's a lot of craziness on that email yesterday, walk me through what is happening next week. There's some type of walkthrough, who is conducting it, what is the purpose, and who will be there?
Initially, I think we were going to show, I think I was going to show up, and we were going to walk through the property with the prospective people that were interested, along with the vendor, and I think I don't know if I need to be there or not. I think the vendor was supposed to be doing that. I'm trying
to... So here, Deb Petty, our planner, got an off-the-wall email, I thought it was off-the-wall, from the real estate firm that's doing this RFI, saying basically that she was going to be walking prospective clients through. And I said, that's not your job. They're going to be getting a commission to do this. It's not your job to be walking people through Muckwon. Obviously, we need to have somebody accompany them. We're not going to have, like freewheeling anybody who wants to go down to Muckwon. So who does it is, I'm like completely neutral on that. You guys can decide it. I just didn't like the optics of, and there's been a bit of this where they've gotten a little bit over their skis and sort of been asking Deb to do things, and I'm like, you might be a little bit confused about the roles here. You're the vendor and you're doing this for us. So I just want to make sure that we reinforce the stay in your swim lane, and she does not work for you. Yeah, she works for the town.
Yes.
She does not work for you. And so just that. But if Deb agrees, or you guys all think that Deb is the right one, or you're the right one, you guys can figure that out. I have no opinion really on it.
I was going to show because I haven't been in the building. I was trying to combine two things at once. I'll go along, but I was also going to walk around with them.
That makes a lot of sense, I think, yeah. And Deb definitely knows the building, so she's a good candidate. I just didn't want them to feel as though they could decide that. Okay. So if you guys reach that conclusion, it's fine.
And there was also a letter that a resident wrote. I try to share good information when it comes along. A lot of times there's a lot of negative information about what happens at town hall and what people, but I think that our workers do a fantastic job on the whole. And when we get good news, I like to pass it along. So a resident on Stephen Street sent an email praising our highway department. It was about lighting on the corner of Stephen and Gorwin Drive, and for a bus stop. And our new highway director, Matt Cahill, was right on top of it. He reached out. He went to the bus stop at the time the resident said that they were having problems. It was early in the morning. It was very dark. The street light was out. Then he knows several people that he can call on, things like that, and within a few days he was able to get the street light going. So, that's the type of outreach that we should be doing more of, and more customer service oriented things. Matt was right on it. He did a great job, and the people of the highway department did a great job.
And that's not the first time I've heard that. I had somebody reach out to me just yesterday to say they had a problem, and I said, why don't you reach out to our new highway guy? And he got back to me yesterday and said he was awesome. He already addressed it. And tonight, former Selectman Don Howard said to me, he's great. He came right to my place and took care of an issue that I was having. So I mean, the early reports are quite good, quite positive. So
absolutely,
yeah.
So I wanted to get that out so that everyone knew he was doing a great job, and the other people in the department are doing a fantastic job. And then finally, I attended my first town event on Sunday, the Polar Plunge. I was a spectator, not a participant, but I will be a participant next year. I've been shamed into it.
Run tape.
I know.
I told them he got a pass this year, just a brief reprieve.
What a great turnout. Again, maybe you're used to stuff like that. This is the type of stuff that you don't see everywhere, and it's great to see it here in Hanson. So.
Well, and to that end, a big shout out to Melissa Valavuk and also Kristen Ernest. I don't want to miss anybody. Melissa Melissi, and a bunch of other people on the PTO who put it together. It was a great event. With the exception of Mr. Mitchell, the rest of us were there. Mr. Mitchell had a good excuse though.
I was there in spirit.
Yeah, you were there in spirit, and it is a great community event where everybody all over the place, all different walks of life, and teachers and FinCom and selectmen are coming together, and the message that it gives the kids is, wow, look at the people supporting us in school. So it's just a multi-layered win-win-win. I did feel a bit like we cheated this week though, because the weather was so nice. I mean, it really was nice.
I was still cold just watching.
I mean, it was. I don't want to say balmy, but it was definitely warmer than I had anticipated. So Melissa, I think, has some kind of special divine intervention that she pulls every
It was
year.
68 in Texas on Sunday.
The one comment I'd make, John took his glove off to shake my hand, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to put my glove on."
Cold.
Good luck next year.
Yeah.
And that was it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we'll move to the minutes of December 17th. I had just one minor tweak on the minutes, which was under the licensees. You did have some language, but didn't quite get to the level that I would like, and I'd like this, as an evergreen statement going forward when we approve the licenses. I really want to get specific, and you said there's no issues with any of the licensees. I want to be clear that there's no building code, enforcement issues, back taxes, or any other applicable issues. I want to drill down a little for oil on that.
Sure, so no building, back taxes, police
enforcement
department,
issues,
yeah.
or any other type of issue.
Okay.
So if you can just expand a little on that. Did anybody else have any other thoughts, or if not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, great. And the minutes of January 7th?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes January 7th, 2020.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, great. 200th Anniversary Committee, we have 80, maybe like 75 tickets left for the Roaring Twenties event. Things are really heating up. We actually had a resident volunteer to teach the Charleston at the event, which will be wildly exciting. And more to come on that later. And once again, Audrey Flanagan, shout out to Audrey. She's doing an amazing job of herding cats on that 200th Anniversary Committee and keeping us honest, as she is known to do. And she's quite the project manager. So,
Well, Laura, why don't you mention the extra calendars that are upstairs at Town Hall?
Yes, and if anybody would like to avail themselves of the wonderful Town Hall calendars, they are free, and they actually contain photos that were the winners of the photo contest, and you can keep track of your various dates on that calendar. And will those be in the foyer, Mr. Bloss?
Upstairs by
Okay.
the treasurer collector's office.
Okay.
Do you want us,
Yeah.
do you want us to put some
We
downstairs?
should put some in the foyer too.
Absolutely.
You know, in case people don't want to make their way up to the second floor if they owe back taxes or they're afraid somebody's going to come after them for something, you know. Yeah, exactly. Okay, final Plymouth County Hospital Reuse Committee, Matt.
So we sent our first draft of plans of what we would like to do up at Plymouth County Hospital, just as rough layouts and whatnot, and get opinions from the engineers. They're going to be sending back their second draft to us sometime this week. We'll be meeting next week to review them and continue moving forward with developing plans with it. And as John mentioned, we're also sending off the grant for Mass Trails to be able to relocate the Bay Circuit Trail through Plymouth County Hospital.
Well, that sounds like extremely positive update. McQuon School Reuse, we just gave you the update. They had wild responses, I guess, far more than I think they anticipated from the email, which was making me a little nervous. And so they'll be doing walkthroughs of people who potentially may reply to the RFP, but at least tell us what they'd be looking for in the RFP, and more to come on that. Mr. Mitchell.
We meet February 3rd on Monday. There's been a lot of moving parts, though. There's the Weston and Sampson's had several people come in and go to the building. The engineer actually met with John. You forgot about that meeting you had.
No, I don't want to keep going.
And water, they met with water. There's going to be a
good.
perk test that's going to be going, so there's a lot of, moving parts going on. So
I heard there was a water test because people ended up having some water issues nearby. There was a flow test or something. and
listen,
it
you'd
caused
rather do it
issues.
now than in the summer,
Well,
because a
that's
lot more
true.
people would have brown water.
That immediately hit the press. Now, I'm wondering, Kenny, have we talked, and John, just a thought for you too, have we talked to Deb Petty to see if there may be any grant opportunities for this building?
I have not, no.
Okay, I think it's something in light of our current fiscal constraints that we may want to pursue to just see if that might be something that's out there. Just a thought. Okay, and with that, we will be entering into executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, to wit, highway director and treasurer collector. And to discuss the strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, and the chair so declares, to wit, Fire Union Local 2713. And I will need the second.
Second.
And roll call?
Yeah, aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Lovely.